friend Bob Ransford is with us. He's a communications and land use consultant, and he's also the author of a marvelous column that appears in The Sun every second Saturday called Real Estate Matters. And we're talking about real estate, land development, city plans or lack thereof. A great example, I think, Bob, is this Spetafor project that you've been intimately involved in Tsawwassen. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, first of all, David, let me say right at the outset that I've been involved as a consultant working for the owner of this land, so I just want to put that on the table.
Yeah, so you're being paid.
Right.
Yeah, okay, good.
The Spetafor name is something a number of people in this region will have heard before, because more than 30 years ago it was being debated. It's a piece of farmland, originally over 700 acres in Boundary Bay, in the Tsawwassen community of Boundary Bay. At the time, the farmer, Mr. Spetafor, and a couple of other farmers that owned adjacent land decided that the land just wasn't viable. It's very difficult to farm that land.
It's pretty wet.
It's wet in the winter and it's dry in the summer. In the winter, all of the runoff from the upper parts of developed Tsawwassen runs down onto the land. And in the summer, because the bay is right there, all the water's already ran off into the bay. There's no irrigation water, and you can't pump back water from a saltwater bay and use that to irrigate farm fields. Right. So that's one of the problems. Mr. Spetafor operated a dairy farm, successfully there. But at that time, the municipality of Delta in the late 70s decided that that land should be taken out of the Agricultural Land Reserve. And they applied to the Agricultural Land Commission to remove that land from the Agricultural Land Reserve. The municipality made that application. In 1981, it was taken out of the Agricultural Land Reserve by the cabinet of the day. At that time, the cabinet was an appeal body for land commission exclusion applications. And it was taken out for the expressed reason, and it's written in the order in council that was made, to alleviate the housing shortage in the region. That land today sits there fallow. It's still there. The owners that owns it today has been working for a number of years now with the community, building a lot of consensus around a plan that would see 70% of the land set aside for innovative farming that's viable, what we call agricultural urbanism, and the rest of the land developed with some housing and small-scale housing that is missing in Tsawwassen today to meet the long-term needs of residents in that area.
Yeah, and you've invited a university or college to participate?
Kwantlen University College has been participating in the plan. Their plan was to establish a school of sustainable agriculture on the site because of the innovative ideas that were developed around agricultural urbanism there. To have human-scale local agriculture, not industrial agriculture. Right. In fact, the residents who live around it, this land is surrounded by large homes right now. The residents who live around it, they don't want to see typical industrial farming that takes place in Delta.
Too big, too much.
It's too noisy, it's too messy, it's too intrusive in their neighborhoods. Also, the product that's grown there, most of it is commodity-grown product that's shipped offshore. If you want to go and buy some potatoes that are grown on that land, chances are you're not going to buy them in Tsawwassen.
Okay, but the point is, at this date, as we speak, basically, Tsawwassen has said no.
Tsawwassen has said no because a group of people, a vocal group of people, rose up in the community and said, we don't want to see any development on this site. And some of them actually stood up at public hearings and say, we don't want to see any farming on it either. So what they're saying is, Mr. Owner, please leave the land the way it is and let me walk my dog across your land.
This is interesting because I have two very good friends on opposite sides of this fight. You're one of them. On the other is another friend, a retired broadcaster who lives in Tsawwassen, and he doesn't want it.
He doesn't want to see it develop.
Yes.
But does he want to see it developed in a way today that makes sure that 70% of it set aside in perpetuity for farming, or does he want to risk that somebody 15 years from now is going to buy it and they're going to be able to get all of it out and develop it from property line to property line? Okay,
now wherever you go, whether it's in the city or Tsawwassen, you run into these problems. Right. You run into people saying, no, we don't want anything to happen. You wrote a whole column about Point Grey, and then shortly after you wrote the column, we had this wonderful incident with the folks in a tower at UBC complaining about a 15-bed hospice.
That was a very unfortunate issue, that one.
Yeah,
I can't believe that people would object to a hospice in their neighborhood. Here's what's happening. People are not connecting the dots. They're thinking about reality as it is today and the status quo.
Yes.
Many of those people in West Point Grey live in big single-family homes, and they're in their later years in life. They're over 50, over 60 years old. 10 or 15 years from now, many of them are not going to want to or be able to live in single-family homes.
Right.
But they're not going to want to move from a neighborhood they really like, where they have connections in that neighborhood, where they enjoyed living.
So where are they going to go?
So where are they going to go unless they provide for housing diversity? And housing diversity starts from one end of the spectrum right through to the other. Hospices are a form of housing for people that need it in the final days of their lives.
Right.
Social housing is for people that can't afford it at the low end of the scale. There's medium income housing. There's every type of housing that's needed. Multifamily housing, choices where we have choices around smaller, more compact type of housing, attached housing where we don't have to look after our yards and so on. That's the kind of housing that appeals to people in the later years in their lives.
Yeah. The day I moved into my house 12 years ago, a man came to my door and wanted me to sign a petition against the development at 8th and Sassamat. And I said, hey, that's going to cost, this is 12 years ago. I said, that's going to cost $750,000 a unit. No coke dealers are going to be there. The parking's going to be underground. It's a boon to the neighborhood, and it's a boon to the tax base. Get off my property and leave me alone.
And that housing, which are townhouses,
Yeah.
large townhouses,
They're pretty
fits
fancy.
very nicely into that community. Part of the fabric of that community provides some alternatives to the single-family homes that surround it.
And let me tell you, that $750,000 apartment is now 1.4.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
You know what's ironic? The people in West Point Grey that opposed anything more than, they said, we're willing to see some more single-family infill housing in our neighborhood and some duplexes. They didn't want to have any townhouses. They didn't want any apartments. Those same people are saying, we want to see the rapid transit line extended along out to UBC, along 10th Avenue or along 16th Avenue or along Broadway.
Yes.
We want to see rapid transit come out to UBC. How could we extend a rapid transit line through a single-family neighborhood that has no density?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's go to the scariest neighborhood of all, and that's the world-famous downtown East Side. Some things are happening there, but there's huge resistance to change. And now we have a fight about heights of buildings, and there's a Fight the Height group and so on. Many well-known people are involved in trying to change things, and many well-known people are involved in trying to not have any change. What's your take on all of this?
Well, I think before we even talk about the form of development, whether they're tall buildings, short buildings, or so on, we need to get to one important point, and that is that this neighborhood has huge potential if we can make it a real neighborhood. Let's not forget, historically, that was the downtown of Vancouver. That was the center of our city, and it was a mixed-use neighborhood with people of all income levels living there and all kinds of commercial services supporting them. Today, it's become a monocultural type of neighborhood, so artificially developed by those that are trying to do good things socially. They've concentrated too much social housing down there, and there's not enough other forms of housing down there. Now, I don't want to displace the social housing. I'm not threatening anybody that lives in a subsidized unit down there now saying your home's going to get torn down and that site's going to get redeveloped. It's lunacy to even think that will happen, because most of those sites are either owned by the government or some nonprofit organization that's doing good. They don't want to redevelop their site. What we need to do is take the other land that's in that neighborhood, and we need to introduce other forms of housing. Housing for modest income people, housing for higher income people, other forms of housing, some high-rise or medium-rise buildings, some townhouses, the type of housing that you see in a healthy neighborhood. Now, should there be tall buildings there, high skyscrapers? That's up for debate. I'm not sure I want to see all of the buildings in the downtown East Side be large towers. I don't think that fits with the character of that neighborhood. But we certainly have to stand up and say this neighborhood deserves to be part of the city of Vancouver like every other neighborhood. Yes. And at the same time, we need to say to other neighborhoods in this city, you're no longer going to shirk your responsibility of taking the social housing that's been warehoused in the downtown East Side because it was the easy thing to do.
And you've called it a ghetto, and you've pointed out that it has so many, several hundred social service agencies, and there's a lot of money, social service money, that flows into that neighborhood every day. It's estimated about $1 million a day in social services, and that a lot of people are invested in keeping it that way.
There's over 100 nonprofit organizations whose objectives are to do work in that neighborhood. And they're all doing good work. There's no doubt about it. They're doing good work, and their intentions are good.
Yes.
Well, you smile, maybe not every single one of them, but a number of them are doing good work in that neighborhood.
They have good intentions.
They have good intentions.
And we know what we say about good intentions.
And the housing that they provided in that neighborhood is there. We can't take that away.
Right.
And some of it's very good housing, and it's all of it's much needed housing. But at the same time, neighborhoods like Kerrisdale and Killarney and Marpole and Shaughnessy and all of those other neighborhoods have shirked their responsibility to take any social housing. So it's been very easy to, for want of a better term, dump it in that neighborhood. And I've called it a ghetto, and every time I do, I get a violent reaction from people. But it's an unhealthy neighborhood. That's why I use the term ghetto. Right. It's an unhealthy neighborhood because it doesn't have a mix of people of every part of society.
We've got about 2 minutes left. Give us a blanket solution. How do we get Vancouver City, Surrey City, Metro Vancouver, Regional Vancouver to start being serious about planning?
Well, let's start with Vancouver first.
Okay.
Vancouver took the lead in North America 20 years ago to bring people back into the downtown core and to show what a livable downtown can be.
They also made a huge move under Harcourt to not have a freeway running through the center of the city.
And that was a wise move in the late 60s to do that.
Right.
And the move in the 80s to bring people back to live in the downtown was a wise move, and it's held up as a model in North America.
Right.
The city of Vancouver can be a model in this region if it can show how we can redevelop our first-ring suburban neighborhoods and make suburbia better. The suburban neighborhoods within the city of Vancouver need to see a better mix of housing types, need to see some concentrated, compact density in those neighborhoods, and that will show the region that we can do the same thing.
One of the great beauties of False Creek South, which is used as a model all over the world as one of the great urban developments, is that you will see a community housing right next door to expensive condos, and you can't really tell the difference at first glance.
No, and we're trying to achieve the same thing with the Olympic Village site, and there's people who've criticized that idea of having a mix down there. I'm not one of those. I think it's wise to do that, but we've got to do it smartly as well. The Olympic Village is another story. It hasn't been done in a smart way.
It is another story. Come see me, I'll give you a deal. No, I'm just kidding. Bob, thanks so much.
Thank you, David.
This has been great. All right, folks, we're out of here in a moment. Just a reminder that next week, our guest is Kathleen Bartels, who is the director of the Vancouver Art Gallery, and the question there is to move or not to move. That's the $500 million question, and if you think you're not interested in art, this is an important one because we're talking about a lot of public money. Thanks so much for being with us. Remember, again, davidberner.com is the site to visit. We appreciate your being here. Thanks so much, Bob. That was great. Yeah, it was fun.